Hey everybody, welcome to In the Red Zone. Sean Brown, Michael Johnson here, and it is time for Week 6 college football picks. We had a tremendous Week 5. But before we get started with that, we need to take the time to acknowledge we have a sponsor here at In the Red Zone, BUSR, formerly known as Bet US Racing. Yeah, Buser, as I sometimes call them. They are now partnered with us, so you can go check them out. If you go to busr.com/redzone, put in the promo code SPORTS100FP, you can get 100% free play. So if you deposit $100, you get $100 to play with, so you get $200. So go check them out. Helps us out, help you guys out. If there's any issues, feel free to contact us. But they offer more than just sports betting, casino, horse racing, things like that. Yeah. So go check them out.
Yeah, they started out as horse racing and then quickly turned into betting on college games. So go try your luck with them.
Over the course of the last couple of years, we've turned down probably a dozen sponsorship offers, and this one just kind of felt right for us, so we're going to give it a try. So, hey, we do this for free and everything. I know it's for entertainment, but we don't ask you guys to donate or anything like that.
Right.
But, so by watching our videos, and if you are gambling, go check them out. I mean, that helps us out too. So
be healthy with it. Don't bet your next month's rent.
Right. Be responsible.
Obviously, the standard, just don't go, just don't spend money you don't have on it. Be healthy with it, be mindful. But we feel good about the sponsorship, and we're so excited. Like Mike said, we don't do this for a job. This is just fun for us, and we don't use computer algorithms. We say that all the time. We just look at the games, and we love college football, and so that's what we do.
Let's talk about Week 5 briefly, and then we'll move on. The biggest win, Cincinnati beating Notre Dame convincingly. And, I'm disappointed in what I've been seeing online from a lot of fans talking about how Notre Dame's overrated and they're trash and Cincinnati's trash too. And I think that's ridiculous. I think you people need to check yourself, because Notre Dame has the toughest schedule in all of college football. They're not playing cupcakes. They're playing tough teams week in, week out.
Yeah.
And any of the other teams in the top 5, if they were playing Notre Dame's schedule, I highly doubt they finish the season undefeated.
Yeah.
So Cincinnati's for real. They've had 2 undefeated seasons. They've done absolutely everything you can ask them to do, and they're winning the games that they need to win.
Yeah.
And so Cincinnati's a good team. I think they're deserving right now.
Yeah, a little bit of fortune on their side. I think 6 of the top 15 teams lost. This last week.
Like that. Yep.
So definitely one of those crazy years where a lot of highly ranked, and I say ranked, but really are
the
these
rankings
polls.
Don't really matter until the end of the season.
Yeah.
Then let's see who you beat and where that team's ranked. But, but this is all we have to go off right now. So.
It is a crazy year, but LSU losing, Clemson barely winning against Boston College and then dropping out of the top 25.
Kentucky beats Florida. Stanford beats Oregon, which we're going to talk about in a second.
Yeah.
Texas A&M loses their 2nd game in a row. I mean, they were ranked.
Yeah. So that Arkansas wins against Texas and Texas A&M are, looking pretty good against Texas, but maybe not so good against Texas A&M now.
Yeah. Although, I mean,
and it's only going to get harder for
what
Texas
Georgia
A&M.
did to Arkansas, man.
Oh my goodness. I didn't see that coming. I did not see Alabama beating Ole Miss as much as they did.
I did, just because I predicted that Alabama would score 50 points and get 500 yards of offense. I didn't look at how many yards of offense they had. They scored 42 because Ole Miss hadn't played anybody, and they had been giving up 20 points a game and 350 yards a game to nobody competition. And so to think that they were going to somehow keep Alabama to that, I mean, there was just no way. I mean,
well, and I also didn't see Tunga Vailoa throwing 5 interceptions in that game.
Iowa turned the ball, or not Iowa, Maryland turned the ball over 7 times.
7 times.
7 times. I mean, they gave up 230 yards, I think, on the ground and 3 touchdowns, and then they gave up 3 through the air. So, I mean, Iowa just exploded. And so, Oklahoma didn't cover, but they did get the win against Kansas State.
Yeah, they've got problems that a week of practice isn't going to fix.
Right.
I don't believe that.
The Buckeyes exploded on Rutgers. I mean, that was incredible. Looks like they might have fixed some things.
The teams that watching some of that game, I thought, man, this Ohio State keeps playing like that, and they can inch their way up, because a lot of teams are going to continue to fall once they lose.
Yep.
If Ohio State just keeps doing what they're doing, keeps building off of that, Rutgers has gotten better. They're not Kansas anymore, or
right.
like Kansas. Just like Arkansas is getting better. Stanford has turned a corner. These teams are still good. It's just, can you play consistent? You haven't played consistent in a very long time. So it's going to take, maybe a couple more years for some of these teams. But with Ohio State, if they keep winning, Michigan's going to be a test this year. But if they keep winning, they still have that chance. I mean, they're one-loss teams getting the CFP all the time. So we'll see what happens with them.
They win out, they win the East.
Yeah.
So, it's just that simple. That's the way for Michigan. It's that way for Penn State. You win out.
The only thing is that Oregon is now losing.
Yeah.
And you don't want to see that, but I've seen with Oklahoma, they lost to a bad team one year, and then, that team goes on to lose and lose and lose, and it really didn't affect them. As long as they just keep winning, winning.
I brought this up after they lost to Oregon, and all the similarities of Ohio State now compared to Ohio State in 2014. Because that year you had J.T. Barrett as a freshman come in to play. They lose to Virginia Tech, which was a worse loss then than losing to Oregon now.
Michael Brewer.
And they go on to run the table. They do get in the playoffs over TCU and Baylor. They beat Alabama in the semifinal, and they beat Oregon in the championship.
Yeah.
They struggled on the offensive line at the beginning of the year, especially against Virginia Tech that year. Same thing this year. And now they're kind of hitting their stride just like they did in 2014. I don't know. History does repeat itself sometimes, so they have that on their side.
That was the year the Big 12 just shot themselves in the foot by saying we have two champions.
One true champion, and they had tri-champions that year. So, that was terrible for them.
Yeah.
So anyway, Oregon loses to Stanford. Stanford just kind of like one of those up and down teams. Oregon was without their offensive coordinator for an illness, not COVID, but I'm not sure what. We don't know what it was, but
Oklahoma State took care of business against Baylor.
They did. Baylor gave up that late touchdown, which caused them not to be able to cover.
Yeah.
So that was disappointing for me. And then Auburn, Bo Nix becomes a 1 week hero for Auburn getting the win against LSU.
I saw Auburn fans jumping off that train last week, and now it's all. Bo Nix this, Bo Nix that.
Well, the wagon's about to explode this week, so we'll talk about that in a second. You ready to pick some games?
I'm ready to pick some games.
All right, let's get into Week 6. We're picking 19 games. Had 20, but there were just a few of them here that just don't make any sense to be picking, so I pulled one out. So picking 19 games this week. Last week you were, 13-7?
Yes.
And I was 11-9.
2 good weeks for me.
Yeah, both of us over 500 2 weeks in a row. So let's get started with Week 6 picks right now. We're going to start out with Temple at Cincinnati. Before we start here, you're going to see rankings on the screen, these rankings. Something we're doing every week now. Sunday night after the last games, I'm putting together a Red Zone Top 25. That video will be released Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. Eastern. And the truth of the matter is, the only rankings that really matter are the college football playoffs, and we don't get those till the end of November.
Yeah.
So AP doesn't really matter. So you know what? Why don't we just do our own rankings? Because we know how sports writers are. They don't know any better than any of the rest of us fans, including you, all of you. So we're just going to do ours. And so the rankings you see on the screen, those are our rankings, the Red Zone rankings, and that's how we're going to do it every week until the playoff rankings come out.
Yeah.
So Temple at number 4, Cincinnati. Cincinnati is a 28-point favorite. Just a few stats here for you. Desmond Ridder, 1,054 yards on the year, 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Ford, the running back that transferred from Alabama, 67 carries for 367 yards, 6 touchdowns. And for Temple, they're giving up about 30 points per game. And their losses so far this year were to Boston College and to Rutgers. So I have to stick with Cincinnati. Cincinnati knows it's not just good enough to win because of the position they're in. They have to go out and they have to dominate every single week. They know they have to do it this week. They can't afford a letdown. And I think they have the leadership and the seniors on that team that they're not. I mean, Desmond Ridder came back. He could have went to the NFL, and he came back for this. So I don't see a letdown.
From here on out, until that bowl game, you got to think Desmond Ridder, until they play SMU, he's head and shoulders the best player on the field, in each game. So, hopefully health becomes, a strength for him and he doesn't get injured, knock on wood.
Yeah.
But I know Temple's on a 2-game winning streak here, but look, they're giving up more points than they're scoring through the year, and Cincinnati's just they're not Memphis. They're better than Memphis, way better than Memphis, and I know Temple just got a surprising win over Memphis this last week, but then their last win was against Wagner, 41-7, and then like Mike said, their loss was against Boston College, or their last loss was against Boston College. They did beat Akron 45-24, and then lost to Rutgers 61-14. That was the first game of the year. We don't hold first games against really anybody. Yeah. But Cincinnati going out and beating Indiana, Notre Dame. They did beat Murray State and Miami of Ohio, and in those wins, 24 points is the lowest they've scored. In the other ones, 38, 42, and 49. So I think that continues this week. I think you see them maybe score over 40 in this game. I don't think Temple can hang with that. So give me Cincinnati.
Okay, next one. Number 25, Stanford versus Arizona State. Arizona State, a 9.5-point favorite. Stanford beat USC, Oregon, and Vandy this year, but they lost to UCLA and Kansas State. For Arizona State, their only loss was to BYU, and they beat UCLA. Arizona State's given up 17 points per game. Their offense is averaging 442 yards and 34 points per game. And Stanford giving up 403 yards per game and 26 points per game. So there's just a few stats on there. Initially when I saw this, based on watching Stanford and Oregon last week, like I was just going to take Stanford. They're the underdog. 9.5 points seems like a lot. But when I look closer at Arizona State, I mean, that only lost to BYU, and it was a good game. And I think that Arizona State's a really good team this year.
Yeah.
And I think that, Stanford's up and down. They have a great game. And I just think beating Oregon, they probably have a letdown. They partied and celebrated, and I don't think they can do it this second week in a row. So I've got Arizona State winning and covering.
Yeah, Jaden Daniels playing probably the best ball he's played of his career. He's at almost 72% completion percentage. He's averaging 9.6 yards per attempt. He's got 4 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. You'd like to see him not give up the ball so much. He's got a rating of 158.9, and he's rushing for 7 yards a carry with 2 touchdowns. So he's definitely a mobile quarterback. He's playing for the NFL right now. This is his year to shine, and I don't know that Stanford really can keep him kind of in check.
Right.
They've had they did get the win against Oregon in overtime, but I believe Kayvon Thibodeau got knocked out of that game. I'm not sure what quarter that was that he got ejected for targeting. But they did the old
Stanford had to
school.
score with the last play of the game to get it to overtime to
Yeah.
even have a chance to win.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not like they were dominating Oregon.
Right. But in the other games, Stanford has gotten beat by UCLA 35-24. They got beat by Kansas State 24-7 in that first game of the year. But they have beat USC, Vanderbilt. They lost to UCLA. Arizona State, like Mike said, only loss was to BYU. But just like with Cincinnati, they've scored 42, 35, 37, 41. I mean, they're just scoring so much that I don't believe that Stanford has enough. Just like with Temple and Cincinnati, I don't see Stanford hanging with the offensive firepower that Arizona State has. Yep.
Okay. Next game, Georgia, ranked second. They are 14.5-point favorites at Auburn. We talked about Bo Nix being the hero last week. He goes back to being a zero this week, and they're ready to replace him. And Auburn fans are ready to run him out of town. It's going to happen because Georgia has only given up 4.6 points per game. 2 straight shutouts now, and the last 2 games combined, Georgia has beat their opponent 99-0 in the last 2 games. I mean, you talk about impressive. Georgia's only given up 67 yards rushing per game, and they're only giving up 110 yards through the air. Auburn has no chance, 0 chance.
Yeah.
This is a major blowout, just like Georgia's been doing to everybody else. Georgia covers 14.5 easy, probably beats Auburn like 34-0 or 34-3.
Yeah. what's crazy to me is if you'd have told me that Stetson Bennett would have been the quarterback for Georgia and he would have thrown 11 passes, connected on 7 for 72 yards, I would have said, give me Arkansas all day long in that game.
Yeah.
But it was just their defense got 4 sacks, 7 tackles for loss. They got 3 passes defended, and let's see, 1 defensive touchdown, I think. No interceptions, no fumbles. But yeah, that was just that's an incredible stat line that they won 37-0 with their quarterback going 7 for 11 for 72 yards.
Yeah. Shows how good that defense is.
Yeah, so. And KJ Jefferson went 8 for 13 for 65 yards. So not really surprising. It just was a snooze fest when it comes to passing the ball.
Yep.
But I've got Georgia in this one. I think they keep it rolling. I know Auburn's got to be pretty high on that, beating LSU. Hey, they're scoring 40 points a game. They're giving up 16, and they're only giving up 81 yards rushing on the ground. So this may be an interesting one. I mean, this might be one that I'm not so confident in if Georgia's going to rush the ball the whole game. I know, but to not give up 100 yards a game, that's pretty impressive. To have Auburn usually has a really good defensive line. So we'll just see. I'm reluctantly taking. I think Georgia wins this game, but
you don't think they can cover.
But I'm going to take them to cover.
Okay.
It could be a 21-point game.
Okay.
I'll take Georgia.
I'll take a major blowout there. Okay, Arkansas ranked 11th, taking on Ole Miss ranked 19th. Ole Miss a 3.5-point favorite coming off the loss to Alabama. Hey, this game, get your popcorn ready because Arkansas is going to whip Ole Miss. And I'll tell you, and here's why. For Ole Miss, they gave up 210 yards rushing and 4 touchdowns to Alabama. They're not good against the run. And that's what Arkansas does best is run the ball. They're going to run the ball all over Ole Miss. Arkansas defense is going to shut down Corral in the passing game. They've learned what they need to do from watching the Alabama game. Arkansas averaging 223 yards rushing per game, which is impressive. And they are only giving up 129 yards per game passing.
Yeah.
So, this has Arkansas written all over it. I just think, I don't think Ole Miss is for real. I never bought into the hype. I didn't believe in it. They hadn't played anybody until Alabama. They hit another brick wall. Ole Miss, just like Texas A&M, second loss in a row coming up. Won't be in the top 25 after this. So I've got Arkansas easily covering, but I got Arkansas winning the game.
Arkansas just hasn't faced a quarterback like Corral. I don't know how much he's able to. I'm going to take Ole Miss just in the turnaround to. I know both teams got beat handily by the 1 and 2 team in the country, let alone the SEC. This is another one I don't feel great about, just because both teams. You can say the same thing about either team. Mm-hmm. They both lost in a big way to really good teams this last week. I wanted to take Arkansas just because I thought they would turn it around. KJ Jefferson would come out and be commanding like he has, throughout this year. But Ole Miss, the same thing. Like Arkansas has just not, they've not seen a quarterback like Matt Corral. That's the only thing that just really gives me pause when picking this one. I think I'll go against you in this one. Okay. I'll take Ole Miss. I was going to take Arkansas, but I'll take Ole Miss. It's at Ole Miss. Yeah,
I'll send you a bag of popcorn to watch the game.
Okay.
Next game, Wake Forest is a 7-point favorite against Syracuse. I didn't take a whole lot of notes on this one. The one thing I know about this is that when you play at Syracuse, their dome is not climate controlled. So
bad.
When you play them early in the season, it's hot and miserable. And 4 years ago, when Kelly Bryant was the quarterback at Clemson, I picked Syracuse to upset Clemson, and I picked that one right. Yeah. And a lot of it has to do with that. But we are into October, and up in New York, the temperatures are coming down.
Yeah.
It's not quite as miserable and as hot inside that dome. And Wake Forest is playing tremendous. I think Wake Forest and Pitt are the top 2 teams in the ACC right now. And I like Wake Forest to win the game. It's only 7. I'm taking Wake to cover that.
Yeah, Syracuse, looking at their schedule, they got beat by FSU, Florida State. They beat Liberty 24-21. They beat Albany 62-24, and then they got beat by Rutgers 17-7. And then they went up to Ohio and beat Ohio 29-9. Wake Forest beat Florida State 35-14 on the 18th of September. And with them, they really haven't played. I mean, they played Virginia, they played Louisville, they played Norfolk State, and they played Old Dominion. So really not a whole lot to go off of there. But just for the sake of what their defenses are giving up, Wake Forest has only given up 18.2 points per game, and Syracuse has given up 20.8. So not a lot of discrepancy there. Wake Forest is scoring more on the offensive side of the ball. I'm going to take Wake Forest. I'll take Wake Forest. I know it's muggy in that dome, and nobody likes to go there. No opposing team likes to go there. The media guys hate it.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to cover.
I remember Dusty Dvorak talking about how he sweats out his shirt whenever he has to go call a game there in the beginning of the year. But so I'm taking Wake Forest. Yeah.
All right. Red River rivalry. Oklahoma 3.5-point favorites against Texas. Just a few stats here. Spencer Rattler has completed 122 passes for 1,260 yards, 10 touchdowns, 4 interceptions on the season. Casey Thompson, who didn't come in and play until after the Arkansas game, correct? I think is when he started. He has completed 54 passes for 707 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. So less than half the attempts and completions, yet the numbers, if you look at percentage-wise, better than Rattler. For OU, the offense is averaging 38 points per game. They're giving up 19 points per game. Texas is averaging 43 points per game and giving up 24 points per game. Dejon Robinson has carried the ball 105 times for 652 yards and 7 touchdowns, which is pretty good. Brooks for OU, 54 carries for 318 yards and 4 touchdowns. And the telling stat here, OU, you take out the Western Carolina game against an FCS school, and they have won their games by 5, 7, 3, and 6 points. So an average of 5-point margin of victory per game for OU against the teams they've played. The bottom line, and I told Shaun before we started shooting, was whoever was the favorite, I was taking the underdog. Yeah. So OU is the favorite, I'm taking Texas.
Yeah, man, just like I said earlier, I don't think that the problems that OU has, I don't think that those are just easily fixable within a week. I mean, their offensive line still is a problem. It just is. I mean, you saw it if you were watching that OU K-State game. One of their starting offensive linemen for 3 years had to be benched because he just, holding call after holding call, and then he has a stupid play after the whistle's blown where he takes a shot at KSU defender. At this point in your career, at this point in the season, you can't be making those mistakes. And I believe that was right before Rattler threw the interception, which they did score on every possession besides the interception. So that was good. They were very efficient. I will say Spencer Rattler is I think he's ranked second in completion percentage at 76%. But he's also not averaging that many yards per attempt. It's definitely, when you look at the stats, it does not look like a Lincoln Riley offense right now.
Yeah.
They are starting to rush the ball better, and when they rush the ball more than they throw the ball, typically they get a win. I think it's like over 95% of their wins have come from rushing the ball more than throwing the ball. So they have to continue to do that. I just think this is going to be a razor-thin game. I think it's going to be a 1 or 2 point game.
That's why I took the underdog.
Right. Yeah. So it's horns down all day in my house, in my life, but I've got to take Texas to cover that. I think put them down. It's Texas hate week. So yeah, no Texas friends here this week. After that, we'll talk. But no, I don't know. I see them having the same problems. What I did like is that Marvin Mims is starting to kind of come alive. This was about the time last year that he really started to shine. So
and this whole past week, his dad out there on Twitter complaining about the offense,
saying something has to change, and they were getting the ball out to. One of the problems, and you see this with Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr., is that when ODJ is on the field, Baker seems to just lock on to him. That was kind of happening with Spencer Rattler and Jaden Hazelwood. It's just like, I'm going to get the ball to my buddy, and we'll be the heroes and stuff. But Spencer started to kind of pass the ball, spread the ball around a little bit. Mike Woods is coming alive. So I think that they're able to start scoring more. Let's see if their defense, their linebackers, and their secondary can play a lot better. They were without their starting strong safety, Delarian Turner-Yell, this last week, and that kind of hurt them. They're also without a starting corner, Woody Washington, who I don't know when he'll come back, but I think this is going to be a very thin game. I think OU wins it because, and I know that's kind of a cheap way out of this, but
who you got for the pick?
But I've got Texas for the pick.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that usually in this game, just like any rivalry game, whoever's propped up the most usually ends up losing the game. Whoever's the dog, and I would consider OU the underdog because they just have been kicked so much this year. Their students or their athletes, they see all this stuff that's being written about them in media. They hear about it. They know that stuff's being said about them. So I think they come in with a chip on their shoulder. They win the game, but not by much.
Okay, next game. Vanderbilt is at Florida. Florida is a 38-point favorite. I'm just going to take Florida. I mean, Vanderbilt is really bad.
Yeah, not a lot to say.
I just threw this one in there because it's Florida and we have Florida fans. So
yeah, and Florida, just losing to Kentucky. Hey, Kentucky is good. They're a good team. They're coached very well. Mm-hmm. Mark Stoops does a heck of a job. There's a reason he's been there as long as he has been. Now, they haven't won the SEC since he's been there, but they're still a good, solid, serviceable team. So
I was a little bit concerned with how Dan Mullen responded in postgame because he was asked a question, did you get out coached? And he said, well, we gained more yards. We had 300 and some yards and they had 200. So
that doesn't matter if you give up the ball
it's like he's not
have
even
penalties.
Willing, when you lose, dude, it's on your shoulders. You're the head coach.
Yeah.
You take responsibility. Step up to the mic and say, I didn't do a very good job. We've got to do better. That's what you say as a coach.
Yeah.
He wasn't willing to do that. I think that speaks volumes for what's going on at Florida right now. But it's Vanderbilt. They don't have a problem with Vanderbilt. So, you ready for the next one?
Yes. I'm taking Florida in that. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Maryland is at Ohio State. Ohio State is a 19.5-point favorite. Maryland, 7 turnovers last week against Iowa, 5 interceptions. They gave up 145 yards rushing and 3 touchdowns to Iowa. They gave up another 3 through the air. And for Ohio State, they're averaging 45 points per game. They're averaging 555 yards per game. They hit their stride this past week against Rutgers. This matchup is very similar. Ohio State and Iowa, very similar when you compare matching up to Maryland. Maryland has to come to the shoe. They just got trounced. Ohio State is hitting their stride. I don't think 19.5 is too much. I got to take Ohio State to cover that.
I think it'll be like a 14-point game.
You got Maryland.
I'm going to take Maryland to cover that. Yeah.
Okay.
A few games we're going head-to-head against each other. Okay. It's rivalry week for me.
Might as well. Yeah, there you go.
So, bedlam here. But, yeah, I think that anytime you have a game like that where you come out 5 interceptions, typically a good quarterback, but we see this every year with Maryland.
I was about to say, we talk about
year
this.
We see this
they start off hot, and then they just tank.
Yeah.
And it's just, like last year, year before last, I think it was 2019, they start off really hot, We picked them, I think, to beat Temple, and Temple trounced them.
Yeah.
And then it's like the next week, okay, they're going to bounce back, and they never bounce back the whole year. So this is a tendency with Maryland: start off hot, and for
maybe
whatever
Ohio
reason,
State fixed the problems that they had.
Yeah, I think they did. So I've got Ohio State blowing
but they've
them out.
still got a secondary that I wasn't able to really watch much of that game.
Yeah.
How was their defense? Because
to be honest with you, I was so locked in on the Cincinnati Notre Dame game. Yeah. I was flipping back and forth. I'd catch a little bit here and there. I didn't watch much of the game, and that's a rarity because I watch every Ohio State game.
Yeah.
But it was just there were so many other games on I needed to watch. I needed to see some teams, and that game to me just wasn't that important.
I'll stick with Maryland. With Maryland.
All right. Next game, Michigan State is a 5-point favorite against Rutgers. Michigan State's 5-0. Rutgers is 3-2, but Rutgers has given up 21 points per game. Michigan State struggled these last 2 games against Nebraska and Western Kentucky. Big red flag for me. I know Rutgers got trounced by Ohio State, but listen, Rutgers played Michigan and Ohio State back-to-back weeks.
Yeah.
I mean, that's tough. That's very tough. I still think Rutgers is a better team than their 3-2 record, and I think Rutgers gets the outright win against Michigan State. Michigan State has really been struggling. The only real and the win over Miami is not even that big a deal right now because Miami's so bad.
Yeah.
So I like Rutgers in this game. So give me Rutgers in the points.
Yeah, I do think, like you said, Rutgers is better than their 3-2 record. Michigan State's 5-0. Nebraska isn't just. They're just a shade above kind of bottom dweller to me. Mm-hmm. They can play good, so man, I don't know. Michigan State's they did beat Western Kentucky this last week 41, but they still had 31 scored on them.
Yeah.
Those 2 games of Michigan and Ohio State. I mean, that's just completely different teams getting off the bus before the game.
Yeah.
Completely different. I mean, you see 5-star, high 4-star, high 4-star, 5-star getting off that bus. With Rutgers, you don't really see that right now. Man, they're just coached really well. So I'm going to take Rutgers as well. It's a 5-point spread.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to take Rutgers. I think they get back on track this week and hand Michigan State their first loss.
Okay, next one, South Carolina is at Tennessee. Tennessee is a 10-point favorite. I threw this one in because I'm intrigued with Tennessee this year. They're playing a lot better. They went in and just trounced Missouri.
Yeah.
I think they're playing really good. I mean, they lost that game to Pitt, but Pitt, I think, is the best team in the ACC this year. So even though Pitt lost to Western Michigan, I get it, but I mean, that was kind of like a fluke in my opinion. I'm not sure
Kenny
what happened
Pickett's
there. Yeah,
crazy good.
Yes,
he's really
absolutely.
good.
So in this one, Tennessee's home. They've turned things around with Josh Heupel there. I'm just intrigued by them, and I just feel like they're a better team than South Carolina. I'm going to take Tennessee. I think it's borderline whether they cover 10 or not. I wouldn't bet on this game, but for the purpose of a pick, I'm going to take Tennessee to cover.
This is 2 former OU coaches going up against each other. Yeah. Josh Heupel going against Shane Beamer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting. South Carolina beat Troy 23-14. They got beat by Kentucky, then beat by Georgia. Then they beat Eastern Carolina 20-17. Nothing really jumps out, with their wins. So, and in Tennessee's wins, they beat Bowling Green, Bowling Green is 5-0 in against the spread. I guess that spread was 40-something on that one because Tennessee won it 38-6.
Yeah.
Or I guess it could have been 35 probably in that game, but
they won 38-6. Yeah, the spread was 38 in that game. So that's
was it really?
Yeah, the spread was 38.
Okay.
So if they'd have shut them out, they'd have pushed.
Yeah. So they did lose to Florida, but then they turned around and beat Missouri at Missouri really good. I mean, so I'm going to take Tennessee in this.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Neyland Stadium gets rocking this Saturday and shows South Carolina how it is.
Next game, West Virginia is at Baylor. Baylor is a 3-point favorite. Baylor losing a close one to Oklahoma State. They were right in it there at the end. I mean, the score, it was closer than the score showed. It was really 17-14 kind of game. West Virginia lost to Texas Tech at home after losing to OU, so they're on a 2-game skid.
Yeah.
Baylor is pretty good. I mean, they really are. They're not a bad team at all.
Yeah.
They just ran into an Oklahoma State defense that's pretty good,
Yeah.
pretty tough. I like Baylor at home. It's 3 points.
Yep.
I'm going to go with you take the home team of 3 or less, and so I'll take Baylor.
I've got Baylor as well. West Virginia is just not great. They have a good defensive line. They have pretty good defensive secondary. But their offense just, they don't have anything that really, Neil Brown's got to figure it out because he won't be there very long if he can't, start getting some wins. I don't know. There's just not much to say about it, but I'm taking Baylor. Okay. I think Dave Aranda is a much better head coach. I think he coaches them a lot better than West Virginia gets coached. So,
all right, next game, Boise State is at BYU. BYU a 3.5-point favorite. BYU's undefeated. Boise State's quarterback, can't remember his name off the top of the head. He's throwing for over 1,500 yards. He's just airing it out like crazy. So this one's tough. I think 3.5 is a perfect spread on this. I think it is a close game, and it comes down to the wire. I'm going to take BYU because they're home. I think they can win by 4.
Yeah.
I really do. So I'm going to take BYU to win and cover the 3.5.
Yeah, this one's in Provo. Isn't this kind of a rivalry game between the two?
Well, they're not in the same conference, but I think so.
I know, but they I feel like they play each other quite a bit.
They're two very good programs.
Right.
So,
if you're a fan, just let us know in the comments. But I'm going to take BYU. I think they're on a roll right now.
They won last week, 24-10 over Utah State?
34-20.
34-20, and then Boise State the week before had beaten Utah State 27-3.
Yeah.
So comparable games there, whatever. So say what you want, but I don't know. It's just a gut feeling that BYU is going to pull it out.
Yeah. Boise State does have that loss. I mean, they've lost. And obviously Boise State, they beat Utah, they beat Arizona State, both Arizonas, so they're kind of the Arizona State champion.
Yeah.
But I'm going to take Boise State in that one.
Okay, next one, SMU, 14.5-point favorite at Navy. Navy is only scoring 16 points per game. SMU is scoring 42 points per game. I know Navy runs the option. I think their quarterback, I should have wrote this down. It was a shocking stat. I think in every game, total, their quarterback is only throwing for 84 yards all year long. I mean, they don't throw the ball. They run the ball. And
109 yards.
Okay. Well, so if they can get first downs, control it, they keep SMU's offense off the field. But when SMU's offense does get on the field, Tanner Mordecai and them are going to be explosive. They're going to score quickly. I don't think there's any way Navy keeps this within 14.5 at all. So I will take SMU.
Yeah, he's completed 25% of his passes at home. He's only attempted 8 of those and completed on 2. So Tanner Mordecai,
my Heisman frontrunner at this point.
Former OU quarterback Tanner Mordecai.
Yeah.
1,569 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. When you get a high-powered offense like that against a option team, if the team playing the option like Army did against OU a few years ago can keep the ball out of their hands, then they end up becoming successful. Mm-hmm. I just don't know that Navy really has what it takes to get off the field. So,
right.
And then SMU can score really, really quickly. Tanner Mordecai is not afraid to air the ball out. I mean, he's kind of that gunslinger mentality.
So here's another little thing.
Yeah.
You're saying he threw for 24 touchdowns. Right now, Tanner Mordecai is the only one on pace to possibly throw for 50 touchdowns. And in the past, you throw for 50 touchdowns, you win the Heisman.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's
well, there's that year Baker Mayfield said he had a deal with Justin Timberlake or something where they through Dan Patrick had this deal where if he threw for 50 touchdowns or accounted for something, he would meet him or send him tickets or something to a show and meet him after. But anyway, Navy, they've won one game. They did beat UCF this last week, but UCF, they're not the same as they've been in the past.
Gus Malzahn getting crushed for that loss. I mean,
So, man, I've got SMU in this.
Okay. Best game of the week, the one you got to tune in for. Penn State taking on Iowa.
Top 5 matchup.
This game opened with Iowa as a 1.5-point favorite, has since moved up to 2.5, and it might be moved a little higher.
Or it's top kickoff. 4 according to AP, right?
AP, it's 3 versus 4. Here, for us, it's 3 versus 5 based on our rankings. But Penn State, they're only giving up 12 points per game. Iowa's only giving up 11.6 points per game. Iowa's only giving up 87 yards rushing per game. A common theme here, both have played Indiana. Penn State won 24-0, and Iowa won 34-6. So take that for what you will. Bottom line, it's at Iowa. And to me, Iowa is the better team, and I'm going to take Iowa to cover 2.5. I would take them up to 4.5.
Yeah, Iowa, different from years past, they've been able to score points.
Yeah, surprisingly.
I mean, usually you'd say if you score 30 on Iowa, you're going to win the game because they can't score over 30. But they've scored 51, 24, 30, 27, 34.
Yeah.
They're averaging 33.2 points a game. That's really good. I mean, for what they've done in the past, for the Big Ten, that's pretty darn good. So
you got Iowa?
I'm taking Iowa. Yeah.
Okay. Next one, Notre Dame is a 2-point favorite at Virginia Tech. Notre Dame coming off the loss to Cincinnati. Truthfully, I just think I hate this because for Cincinnati's sake, Notre Dame just needs to win out. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, I think Notre Dame goes in there to Virginia Tech and loses. I think Virginia Tech pulls the upset, and so I've got Virginia Tech.
Yeah, Virginia Tech got a nice little tune-up game since their loss to West Virginia. They went in and beat Richmond 21-10, and then obviously with Notre Dame losing 24-13. But Notre Dame was on a pretty good little run there, 41-13 against Wisconsin, 27-13 against Purdue, 32-29 against Toledo, and then obviously that Florida State overtime win, it isn't looking that great. I'm going to take Notre Dame. I think that was a rough game this last week, but I think that I'd originally wanted to take Virginia Tech, but I'm going to take Notre Dame.
Okay. Next game, Michigan, a 3-point favorite at Nebraska. Nebraska only giving up 122 yards per game rushing. That is Michigan's go-to is running the ball. They don't throw the ball that well. Yeah. I know some Michigan fans have said, well, we haven't had to. Well, you can't. That's why you're not throwing the ball. Because if you could throw the ball, you'd be throwing the ball.
And even the ones that Cade McNamara are throwing just don't look great.
Right. Nebraska manages to get a win. It's Northwestern, but they do. But they're playing good. They play Michigan State tough. They're on that verge, and I just think, for me, I see an upset here, so I'm going to take Nebraska and the points in this one.
Yeah, Caden McNamara is completing in conference 51, and you don't really have that many conference games to judge this on, but he's completing 59% of his passes. He's got 2 touchdowns in those conference games and a rating of 142.8. He's about a click higher than last year. In completion percentage, and then obviously his rating is better. But if Nebraska can hold their rushing, which they have tended to do, I mean they held OU to under 100 rushing yards in that game. That they got pretty close, but Nebraska's getting better. I do think that they pull the upset in this.
You got Nebraska.
Yep.
Okay. LSU is at Kentucky. Kentucky, a 3-point favorite. I'll just go quickly and just say I got Kentucky covering a 3. Yeah. But what I really want to point out here is I was a little bit disappointed today when I got online and saw that all these LSU fans are calling for Ed Orgeron to be fired. And y'all need to check yourself in a mental institution, honestly. I mean, seriously, because 2 years ago, you win the national championship with arguably the best college football team in history, make this huge run with Joe Burrow and all this talent that goes to the NFL. Last year is a COVID year. You can't really count that. Yeah. And then this year, okay, you're not 2019. You know, Max Johnson's not Joe Burrow, and you guys want to run Ed Orgeron out? No, because you lost to Auburn at home. I'm sorry, but you folks need slapped inside the head, honestly. You really do, because that's ridiculous.
Well,
you don't run your coach out at 2 years removed from a national championship.
How much of that was Joe Brady, though?
Some of it. I mean, it's a combination of everything. It's him. It was Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
You had Jamar Chase. You had Stingley. You had all these guys that are now they're dominating in the NFL, and you lose all of that. And you just don't replace all that in a COVID year.
Well,
it doesn't happen.
Part of what is literally in the lap of the head coach is recruiting. I mean, you got to recruit guys that are going to replace those players. So. Yeah. You know, he's now in what, his sixth year?
Fifth, I believe.
Fifth. So, yeah, it's just, you know, had they not had Joe Brady or Joe Burrow, I think had they not had Joe Brady, maybe they don't win a national championship. I mean, he literally turned that offense around in the span of, what, a year? Was he only there a year?
It was 1 year, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, and he found what worked for Joe Burrow, and that ended up working for them. I mean, it was a combination of things, like you said, that just perfectly fell in line for them.
Well, and so this is the biggest mistake I see in coaching. And people can say, well, yeah, you're the great coach. No, but here's the deal. As an outsider looking in, great coaches design a system around the players they have available.
Yeah.
It was the biggest downfall of Rich Rodriguez when he went to Michigan. He went up there at Michigan, had all those Lloyd Carr players who were power running football, and he tried to put a spread offense in and didn't have any personnel for a spread offense.
Yeah.
And what he should have done is designed a system around the players he had as he slowly brings people in, but instead he tried to force a system down their throat, and it tanked, literally tanked. What Brady did was came in, he said, okay, we have Joe Burrow, he's ran this system at Ohio State, this is what he's familiar with, we've got the receivers for it, we're going to do this system because this is the players we have available. They didn't take Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and all them and try to push them into a system they didn't fit in.
Yeah.
And so that's the difference between great coaching and poor coaching. And right now, it is true that I'm kind of contradicting myself here when I say with Ed Orgeron, but offensively for LSU, they do not have a system that fits the players they have.
Yeah.
That's what the problem is at the moment. And firing Ed Orgeron is not the answer, but Ed Orgeron maybe firing his offensive coordinator is the answer.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my, but those you fans quit saying you want to fire Ed Orgeron. It's ridiculous.
All that to say, I'm taking Kentucky.
Okay. All right. Let's move on then. All right, 2 games left. Alabama is 17-point favorite at Texas A&M. Texas A&M coming off their second straight loss. They're not near as good as we thought. Last year they were making that push to try to make the playoffs. Mm-hmm. We really expected a lot more out of them this year. And
I was never really that high on A&M to begin with.
Yeah.
I mean, they lost their starting quarterback, and I just didn't think they had, as good of players to replace him. Isaiah Spiller, yes, he's a very good running back, but he's just not enough. I mean, I don't know. I didn't see A&M just being this world beater that some other, and obviously A&M fans, I mean, they always think they're going to win the national championship. So
they're about to lose a third in a row.
And it's just going to get tougher. I mean, for them, they got a tough schedule every year. So I'm taking Alabama.
I got Alabama covering as well.
I think the wheels are coming off and they're about done with Jimbo Fisher. I mean, that's a $9.5 million a year investment there.
Look at what they did last year, and then I don't know. I think it's way too early to start talking about firing Jimbo Fisher right now. I mean, who are they going to replace him with? I mean, look at what happened.
I don't know. There's guys out there.
USC hasn't been able to find one yet. I mean, that's a better job than Texas A&M.
Yeah.
I think they better stick with what they got because the grass is not always greener on the other side.
You got to try something.
He might have him right back in contention next year. So
I don't know about that, but
all right, we got one game left to pick here. Utah is at USC. USC is a 4-point favorite. USC kind of up and down with what they do. But Utah, they start Charlie Brewer. He gets benched and decides to immediately transfer instead of sticking around and fighting for the job. Is Cam Rising their quarterback now?
I believe so.
They're just not. They're not the dominant Utah we're used to seeing in years past.
Yeah.
USC. I mean, yeah, they're kind of bipolar. One week they're one thing, one week they're another. But at the end of the day, I think USC is just a better team, and they're playing at home, so I'll take USC cover the 4.
Yeah, I've got USC as well. They went up to Colorado. That's not an easy place to go play. Keaton Slovis had a great game. He was 19 of 29 for 276 yards, 3 touchdowns. And then Keontae Ingram, who I always thought Texas mismanaged the heck out of Keontae Ingram. He always averaged more yards per rush than anybody, and then they didn't put him out there. They never gave him. Maybe he just didn't practice that well, but I don't know. I really feel like they mismanaged Keontae Ingram, and then with the McCoy kid who went to Texas and transferred back to Brew McCoy. I don't know what's going on with him, but I don't see him. Maybe he's injured or something. But anyway, yeah, I've got USC to cover that. Utah, I don't think is the same Utah that we've seen, and they've lost a lot. So and a lot of players is what I mean. So yeah, I'm gonna take USC.
That's it for our picks for Week 6. Again, check out our sponsor, BUSR. Go to busr.com/redzone. Enter the promo code you see on your screen there. Get you 100% free play. Check them out. Give them some support. And then with us, always subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, smash the button. What are we doing this week?
Oh, we are we're
punting.
We're punting.
We're punting the subscribe button. Okay.
A lot of teams are punting this year. We're punting.
Yeah. And we don't want to see an upset here on the Red Zone. So hit that subscribe button, like the video. Always leave your comments.
And go bet with them. Come on.
Yeah.
Go bet with them.
Hey, and by the way, I'm doing NFL picks. Those post Wednesday morning. And then Sunday mornings, we do the top 25. And just a little thing here, I'm going to post those on Instagram before I post the video. So go follow us on Instagram and you can see the top 25 before I release the video.
Yeah.
So that's all we have. We'll see you next week. Take care.